What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where in this one, we're going to go over all the guys that the Colts are waiving today. Obviously, this is roster cut down day. There may be some more, so we may have another video later. So if you enjoy the content, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you get notified whenever we do put any more news, updates, and any other content on this channel. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get into this. This is a pretty lengthy list for where we're at. The only one that I actually got a notification for was because I get notifications for Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. And the only one they actually reported on from us was Isaiah Land, defensive end Isaiah Land, which I made a short about a little while ago. You may have seen that. And I thought that was the first because I've gotten all the notifications from Adam Schefter about all the other teams basically in the NFL and all the guys that they're releasing and waiving and whatnot. And but it turns out as I got on Twitter, a whole lot more people that the Colts have waived at this point. Some guys that I'm hoping fall back to us into the practice squad. So we'll see what happens there. But all these guys could end up on different teams, or could end up not on a team at all, of course. So let's go through this. Going to start with wide receiver Coleman Owens, somebody who was impressive when both in the preseason games, and then I got to see him in training camp practice, and really impressed me from the three practices that I had my eyes on. Like he was impressive. He's somebody that I'm kind of worried we might not be able to get back onto the practice squad with the way our wide receiver room is. It was always kind of set. That's what we've talked about, wide receiver room. We know who the six are going to be. But for Coleman Owens, somebody who could be a developmental piece, hopefully he's able to get back onto the practice squad. We'll see if that's able to happen. If that doesn't happen, of course, we'll make a video about it. May just end up making a short about it if he gets picked up elsewhere. So again, stay tuned for any of that. And as we go through safety, Trey Washington. Then you have center, Wesley French. So both French and Fries both gone from the Colts now. We'll see if they decide to pick him back up. I know he was taking some snaps at center with Danny Pinter out. So, do they – I would assume with this move they expect Danny Pinter to be okay for the regular season and for him to be back as a backup piece. Dalton Tucker in the last preseason game took some snaps at center as well. So we have versatility throughout the offensive line, makes Wesley French expendable. We'll see what happens with him. Then you have tight end Jelani Woods, one of the bigger names on this list. Colts fans extremely disappointed, and I'm one of them. Somebody who through his rookie year at different points before he got the initial hamstring injury, you could see what he was able to do. You turn on the tape from college, you see what he's able to do. But obviously hamstring injuries have kind of derailed his career here in Indy. And I'd honestly be surprised if we were able to get him back. There are teams that are tight end needy. And I know the Texans, the Dolphins have been named as a couple that would probably be options for Jelani Woods to end up going there. So going to continue to keep our eye out for that and see what happens there. But we made a video here on this channel a couple weeks ago and talked about Jelani Woods being the odd man out. That does end up being the case for Jelani. Again, third-round pick. That whole draft class really except there were 12 picks in that draft class. And Josh Downs really the only one making an impact on the team. We were hoping Jelani Woods would be somebody who was able to do that as well. But unfortunately, no longer a Colt, at least for the moment. Then you have defensive back Chris Lamons, somebody who Colts fans are very familiar with. He's had to play both special teams and as a starter on defense in Gus's defense due to injuries. So we knew kind of who he was. The coaching staff kind of knew who he was, but now there's obviously new scheme, new defensive coordinator, a couple new secondary coaches. Made some plays throughout the preseason, but ultimately with the trade for the defensive back, the cornerback from the Vikings, makes other people more expendable. Chris Lamons, one of those guys. We'll see if he ends up back on the practice squad. He was on the practice squad for us before. He could end up right back on the practice squad. Then a couple of defensive ends. Obviously, we talked about Isaiah Land. Unfortunate, thought he'd end up making the roster when I went through my 53 and had to make some tough decisions. Hey, this guy's not going to make it. This guy's not going to make it. And ultimately, I thought Isaiah Land might be like at the bottom of the defensive end part of the depth chart, ends up not being on the active roster. I kind of would be surprised if we end up with him. I think somebody else might take a chance on him, but if he could end up back on the practice squad, I think that'd be ideal, having somebody of his skill set, somebody that's made plays at different times. Obviously, not consistent enough to be a starter, but nonetheless, I think he could be a good rotational piece for somebody else, if not us. But hopefully ends up on our practice squad. Then you have a couple other defensive ends. Number 70, I believe it was 74, Darrell Nachami. I'm not sure how to say. I've stayed away from saying that last name because I don't want to butcher it. I thought he did pretty good in the preseason. So this is another guy that looking at, hey, could he make the practice squad? Maybe. When all is said and done, I'll go through and figure out, who should we have on the practice squad? How should that look? I'll try to figure out what the practice squad has looked from year to year under Shane Steichen and kind of see how that's going to be laid out. But I think, another defensive end could end up back on the practice squad. Then defensive end Marcus Haynes also gets waived. Tight end Sean McKeon got released. So that's the one guy on this list that I saw the different verbiage for, right? All these guys have been waived, but Sean McKeon got released. So that's not a waiver thing. That's just, hey, you're immediately into the player pool and free agency. He's free to go and do whatever he wants at that point. And so somebody who that was expected, somebody who just as I got my eyes on him in training camp was like, yeah, that guy probably not going to make the team. Wide receiver Ajay. This dude is a freak. Right, the way he's built is insane, and like when I saw him in practice, it was like, is that guy supposed to be a wide receiver or a linebacker? But he can move. He's a freak athlete, incredibly well built. So we'll see what does his future hold for him. I know he was on the Raiders before. They're talking about, and the stuff I saw on social media was that the Raiders could pick him up and have him as an option for punt returner. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe he ends up back on the Colts on the practice squad. But nonetheless, wide receiver Ajay no longer with the Colts right now. The other wide receiver on this list, wide receiver Landon Parker. Unfortunately, again, the way our wide receiver room is, really had to expect that. Offensive tackle Marcellus Johnson. And this, I'm not even going to lie and act like I knew he was on the team. So this unexpected move, we kind of already knew who the guys were going to be for the offensive line. And with the exception of Wesley French, wasn't really sure if he was going to make it. There was some debate about that, but Marcellus Johnson ends up getting waived here by the Colts. Then you have a safety, Ladarius Tennyson. And again, with the way the secondary is, there's definitely Kyle Duggar is staying in New England. He made their 53-man roster when all was said and done. Through all the talk that's happened over the last week or so, Kyle Duggar's going to stay there. And then, of course, Trey Hendrickson signs his deal with the Bengals and gets a big-time raise, $14 million raise to make $30 million this year. So neither of those things are going to be happening for us. But now we're going to need to find some sort of answer in that secondary. We got to find some sort of depth, and I'll be interested to see exactly what the Colts decide to end up doing from that aspect. And you have linebacker Austin Ajak, somebody who I thought could be a possibility with the rep. He had taken some first-team reps, had a good amount of second-team work throughout this offseason. Jalen Carlisle is going on the IR with the designation to return at some point. So I thought Austin Ajak might be a guy that ends up on the active roster. But obviously that was going to be contentious with the way the roster construction goes. It's really just a numbers game. They had to pick and choose who they wanted, and obviously Cameron McGrone seemingly going to be taking starter reps with Zaire Franklin in this new defense with the injury to Jalen Carlisle. But again, we're going to have to find – there's supposed to be a tweener role somewhere on the defense, and we're going to have to find someone to fit in that spot. Austin Ajak, honestly, I thought could have some special teams utility. They have other plans this upcoming season, so he gets waived. And then the last one on this list for now, defensive tackle Devontae Davis. And again, this is a guy not entirely sure of who he is, not a name I paid a whole lot of attention to, so this was an expected outcome on that defensive front. Kind of know who we're going to have for the most part. I think there's a debate about a couple of guys and kind of how the roster construction is expected to be, but nonetheless, Devontae Davis does get cut. So a couple names on here that or most of these names I feel like were expected, but Coleman Owen, intrigued to see what's going to happen with him. Will Wesley French end up on the practice squad? Where's Jelani Woods going to end up? Where could Isaiah Land possibly end up? Will he be able to get back to our practice squad? Those are names we're going to be looking out for. Ajao, of course, and Austin Ajak, going to be other names that we're tuned into. And again, as soon as there's more people, more roster cuts happening, whenever we find out who's going to be on the practice squad, whatever the case may be, I'm going to get content to you guys as soon as I possibly can. So, again, if you enjoy the content, hit that like button. Helps out the channel a lot, gets us into the algorithm. And, of course, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you continue to get notified anytime we drop any content on this channel. Of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And, as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.